Shalom and welcome to another episode in our series called Faith Journeys with God in the Land. Today we're going to visit this site of Shiloh and talk about young Samuel. Shalom and welcome to ancient Shiloh or Shiloh. I'm actually on top of this tell, one of my favorite sites in all of Israel, because of the story of a guy named Samuel. Now that's captured in chapter 3 of 1 Samuel. Now, this site has been excavated over the last number of decades. The last proposal by Dr. Scott Stripling, who's an evangelical archaeologist who has been digging here with his team from Associates from Biblical Research, suggests that they found the tabernacle. And they suggest it was a more permanent structure, unlike the tent structure that was the form of this movable tabernacle in the days of Moses. So when Joshua conquers the land, they build the tabernacle here, and all the tribes came here early on after the conquest, and the tabernacle stood here actually for a little over 300 years until it was destroyed by the Philistines. And this is after the battle that was waged against the Philistines to the west of here at a place called Aphek. And even worse than that, not only was the tabernacle destroyed, but the Ark of the Covenant was taken. It went into battle, I guess, as sort of the secret weapon for the Israelites, and it didn't help. The Philistines stole it. It bounced around 3 Philistine cities for 7 months until finally the people at Ekron thought, we've had enough of this. It's causing all kinds of issues. They put it on a cart drawn by 2 cows, and up the Sorek Valley it goes to Beit Shemesh, where those who were harvesting their wheat look up, and here comes the ark. And that's the story of 1 Samuel 6. 1 Samuel 2, of course, is when Hannah prays for a son. She is childless at this point. And of course, then, as a result of this prayer, Samuel is born. And this is where we pick up the story in 1 Samuel 3. However, before we talk about the story, behind me is the newer part of the excavations by AVR and Dr. Stripling. Quite impressive structures, all contained within a large, what we call middle bronze wall. So perhaps in this area was the area of the Holy of Holies, the holy chamber of the tabernacle, and some storage rooms attached to the middle bronze wall. This is really an exciting dig, and it's an ongoing dig, of course, coming up this season in May and in June. But you can see behind me some of the impressive archaeological discoveries. But we need to talk about this guy named Samuel. Now, at this point, he's a young boy. We're not sure how old or young, what's his age, but here at the tabernacle, he hears the voice of God, which is really amazing. It's one of these stories where we take a read of it and we go, wow, this young kid heard the voice of God maybe while he was attending the tabernacle right behind me here at Shiloh. Now, at first, if you read through 1 Samuel 3, and I suggest that you do this, at first, he thinks it's the boy of Eli, or Eli, as we would say it. Eli's the priest. And how does Samuel respond? Well, I'm going to show you a piece of pottery with some Hebrew on it. There it is. It's the Hebrew word Hineni. You can see it there. I just wrote it with a black Sharpie marker on an ancient piece of pottery that was found here at the site. Hineni. What does it mean? It means, here I am, but much more than simply, here I am. It means I am ready, I am eager, I am willing. Whatever you say, I am listening. Here I am, I'm ready, and really enthusiastic about what is in store for me. It's the Hebrew word that appears in the text of 1 Samuel 3. So as I mentioned, at first, young Samuel thinks it's Eli calling him until Samuel realizes that it's not Eli, but it's God calling him. Now, I don't know how you would respond if you found out that it was God calling you, but Samuel now says something else. In addition to Hineni, here I am, use me, I'm ready. Samuel says, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. I contend that a big part of our faith journey, and I think you would agree with me, is that it requires us to say two things to God. First, Hineni, here I am, I'm ready, use me, whatever the task may be, I'm up for it. This is what's behind the word Hineni. And secondly, we need to be responding to God's voice by saying, Lord, speak, for your servant is listening. Listening is a very important component of what it means to walk in faith with God. As we see these massive ruins, the big, massive Middle Bronze Wall, and the other ruins that perhaps were a part of the Tabernacle, or at least store rooms attached to this Middle Bronze Wall, and taking a look at this site in terms of what it represents. I mean, young Samuel served God here. And yet he comes to the realization of the importance of saying, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Not only was he eager and ready to respond, but he was listening for direction. And of course, Samuel would be used as a great prophet of God, the seer, as he's called. He would anoint kings. That includes David. And of course, prior to this, Saul. So a massive Middle Bronze Wall, structures inside, perhaps where Samuel stood when he heard the voice of God. Our faith journey requires us to stop and listen. Now, does God still speak to us verbally? Certainly he speaks to us through his word. I think he speaks to us through other people. Perhaps that's how we can find direction or encouragement. He speaks to us through his Spirit. When we are engaged, when we are filled with the Spirit, that prompting of the heart comes when we hear the voice of God, perhaps encouraging us to do something or to befriend someone. But these two actions, saying Hineni and speak, Lord, for your servant is listening, is quite a contrast to what would happen hundreds of years later, really, in the days of Jeremiah, the prophet, who was serving in Jerusalem. And it's so interesting. Read chapter 6, I believe it is, or 7, forget which one now, but this is a passage where we read about the Jerusalemites who did not listen to God. And Jeremiah says, you know, the same thing that happened to Shiloh is going to happen to you. And that's really the gist of those words and the warnings that Jeremiah would offer. So speak, Lord, for your servant is listening, is critical in our faith journey. But it all responds, or begins, I should say, with saying, here I am. Here I am, Hineni. One word, packed with meaning. And it's significant for our faith walk with God. So be encouraged today to say Hineni to God when he's calling you. And make sure that you're listening to God as you seek his direction and guidance. Be encouraged today, and until next time, shalom.